All right, welcome back to the Tuddle Daily Podcast. I've been promoting this for a couple of weeks now because this is by far the biggest guest that I've had on my podcast so far. And I was absolutely shocked that she agreed to do this because, she is a big star in Orlando. And, a lot of people hear our radio station that I used to work on, Real Radio 104.1. And now that she's not on the air right now, she agreed to do it because there's no chance, because we're known as the rats of media in Orlando.
No,
So
you guys were always so gracious and awesome to me. I loved coming because I could actually talk like a normal person and, have an opinion about things on
now,
your.
did you ever come on the show on Real Radio at all?
Yeah, I can't. Who was I? I was on twice. First, when I got to Orlando, I did kind of like a promotional radio tour. So I was on very briefly with, was it the
Probably
Monsters
the
in the Morning?
While, I bet.
No, it was.
No, you were probably on. You were probably on the air at that time.
Yeah, so I did the morning show for a while, and then I came in for an afternoon show when I was still working at Fox. So yeah, but everyone's just always really nice and funny, and I love it. I love it.
Now you brought that up. As an anchor and a reporter working in news, you guys don't really get to go off script much, and us in radio, we're able to just do whatever we want to do and kind of go off script. Is that something that newscasters, even though, like I said, radio, in my opinion, is at the bottom, is that something that you guys are like, man, I wish we could do that, but we got to stick to a script. We got to read off the teleprompter?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly stories that you cover that you wish you had the ability to be more candid with your opinions. But, I think there's a real respect for knowing that our opinions don't matter. And, I always get really critical of seeing TV people think that they're the story too much. So just go in, offer your professional commentary on the topic at hand. But at the end of the day, it's not about you. So I always kept that in mind. I mean, yeah, there are times for it, for sure. Like, this is great. And obviously I'm outside of the journalist, the traditional journalist route right now, so I can share my opinions freely. But I think it's important to respect that, because I think our country is now seeing the impact of people who we thought were journalists who are really just TV editorialists.
Yeah.
And we mistook that for news for so long, right? After 7 p.m., there's no true news. It's all editorial on TV. So you can really mess things up if you don't try to stay in your lane. But yeah, it's nice to be able to do it now, for sure.
Yeah, see, a lot of people get that confused because, they watch like Fox News, all the 24-hour news networks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really not news, because a lot of that is opinionated journalism.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely a point in the day. I remember watching a lot of the cable channels would tend to put their real news, their objective news in a block in the morning, one block at noon, and a block at night. But it was filled in the meantime, like you said, especially in prime time, with opinion journalism. So people, we got to a point where our TVs were always on and this noise was always in the background. So we started to think that that was real journalism. But you have to be a keen sort of consumer of news in that way, especially these days, because we're inundated. There's social media, there's cable channels. It's like, so you have to be smart too as a consumer and understand what you're viewing too.
Now, let's talk about your blog, your website. I've gone through it, and I think it's very interesting, especially with the pandemic we're going through. A lot of mothers, you're a mother of 3, and your blog, you do a lot of different things, but I would say the main focus is stuff that mothers have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Tell people about your blog, why you started it, and where they can find it.
Yeah. So the guiding force behind all my writing has always been just sort of an authentic sort of peek into motherhood from my perspective. And that is important to me, to put out content that respects the reality of the really difficult moments that are motherhood and parenthood. So I do have, it's nice to have really pretty pictures put up and to talk about. I do a lot of talk about beauty products, because working in TV, you get to use all this stuff, and it's fun and it's a diversion from real life. Mm-hmm. But a lot of my writing on motherhood, it focuses around, the mental health aspect of motherhood, dealing with the stress that can sometimes come with it. There's a lot of like funny, I'm pretty lighthearted in my approach to how I view a lot of the crazy stuff that happens in parenthood. So it's kind of like an online journal. And it's also with the podcast become a place where I've brought on a ton of experts too. So because I've always been, I'm just like you, like I love talking to people. I get bored talking about myself. So with the podcast too, I've started to take all these great interviews I've done with authors and experts, and not just in motherhood, but in self-care and health, and take them and make them into blog posts. And I talk to these amazing people. We're talking about, I don't know, hormone health, or I did a whole interview on internet safety with a girl who was abducted after meeting someone online. And I put it onto the blog. So it's not just like you're going to go and find the greatest shade of lipstick, which you will, but there's real stuff on there too, because, life is so much, it's crazy and real stuff. And it's also some of the fun and fluffy. So that's what the blog is too.
Now you talk about mental health. You're a mother of 3, and this is something that doesn't get talked a lot about in this country. Did you ever deal with postpartum or anything like that, or is that something you've discussed on your blog?
Absolutely. Yeah. I dealt with postpartum anxiety after the birth of my second child, my daughter, our first daughter. So I have a son who's 7 now. My first daughter's 5 and the baby's 3. And right after I had her, after having our first, I think I was a little bit just kind of spaced out for a while. Your hormones are it's like a roller coaster. So I think I was stressed out, but I got back to work just fine. After our second, I became it was like my habit and my daily chore to just worry about everything. So I really dealt with anxiety.
For people that don't know what postpartum is, can you explain it a little bit for people that don't know what it's about?
Yeah, sure. So, from a non-medical kind of perspective, I'll do the best to explain, but based on my conversations with, again, people I've interviewed and my own doctors, your body just goes through these massive hormonal and chemical changes as you go from pregnancy through those 9-10 months, after the delivery of the baby and beyond. So what you're dealing with, chemically speaking, in the brain is just a cascade of like chemicals and changes and adjustments that your body and brain have never had to deal with before. And it's just can feel like an alien inhabits your body. Like you're like, oh my God, I never worried. Ask you this. Do you feel like, I know there's a big discussion and there certainly is a place for medication when it comes to any mental illness, but do you feel that substituting those holistic options instead of the medication has worked fully for you?
Yeah. And I'm talking a lot more. I'm more open. See, I still have my bad days because when I was on all those psychotropic drugs, I was never really happy, but I was never really down either. Now, when I'm off of it, I have good days, but I do experience the bad days as well too. So I'm trading it where I'm not just in the middle. I actually get to have really, really good days and experience joy.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the trade-off for being on this earth, right? No one guaranteed when we came here that every day was a day at the park or a picnic. I feel like all of us have been through enough at this point in our own lives to understand that that's the price of admission at this place. We get the downs and then you appreciate the ups more. Now, I do think, there's always shades of how bad your downs are, how long. And of course, that's when you speak to your own healthcare providers, but to put out this, this narrative that, life is great. It's not great every day. And every single person that you see on TV, that you see on social media, I promise you has their issues. Yeah. Promise.
With me right now is Sonni Abatta. Check out her website, sonniabatta.com. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, I want to start back. You're from Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. I know it might be a dumb question, but Mr. Rogers was from Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Did you ever grow up watching him?
Yeah, totally. I did.
Because I saw the movie Tom Hanks did. I watched the documentary, and I really do think we could use a guy like that right now, because a lot of people, it's funny when they look at somebody positive like that, everybody now with social media is like, oh, that's got to be fake. He can't be that great of a person. Um, do you think that's kind of troubling of what social media is, that we're just trying to tear people down now?
That's
Because
definitely the dark side of it. Yeah. Yeah.
it's weird. Now, did you see? Because what's weird is that in radio, I don't know if it's this way in TV, program directors look at that type of stuff now, looking at
Mhm.
what type of engagement you have. And I would never be on social media if it wasn't for what I did.
Mhm.
And I'm sure I can't even imagine some of the stuff that especially females have in broadcasting, some of the stuff that gets said to you guys on a daily basis. People are gotta be really.
Yeah, they're pretty rude. I have to say, I've gotten my fair share of like dirty pictures and mean comments and whatever. But uh, you I guess my parents just raised me to be like, there are two things that matter in life: your health and your family, and God and whatever you believe in, the greater purpose. But like, you got to let the noise go. And I think you probably realize this too. I worked in TV for a total of, when you count, I worked through most of college, 2 at a TV station. So whatever, 15 years of that experience, you start to just like, kind of let it roll off your back. But I feel for the kids growing up in this culture, because I was raised for most of my childhood. I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until college, and it was
Yeah.
not, it was reluctantly at that point. So I didn't grow up exposed to as much imagery and messaging, and even in some cases, like you said, hateful messages as kids these days do. So it's like really important to like really drive that message home with the kids and be like, what you see is not always what you get here. We've already started having conversations because they're on gaming devices sometimes with their friends and cousins and stuff. I fully talk about the dangers of people presenting themselves, pretending like they're kids, and then trying to come kidnap you. Or here's why we don't talk to strangers online, because they can pretend like they're someone, and you have to know how to protect yourself. This is like a whole new world in your hands. It's a world in and of itself. So I try to like drive this stuff home early, even though it feels like they're a little bit young. I mean, 5 and 7, but I have to, because
They're going to be in their teenage years before you know it.
yeah. And they're growing up with this technology. So you have to learn how to treat it and learn what place it should occupy in your life, which is a small spot,
But now my dad, he's an older guy. He's like, the computers are going to be the ruin of this country. And the way I look at it is, how much easier would our childhoods have been? Because when you grow up, you learn a lot of things from your friends, and it's so much misinformation. How much easier it would have been if you could have just Googled something as a kid to be able to find it out back then.
That's true. That's true. I mean, that's like a blessing and a curse, because you know what you find when you Google certain things. I don't know like what kind of answer you would be getting, but you're right. There's like, it's definitely a double-edged sword.
Now, before we move on from Pittsburgh, I'm a little bit of a foodie, and the one main reason I've wanted to visit Pittsburgh is to try one of these GD Permanente Brothers sandwiches. Have you ever are they as good as everybody says?
Yeah, they're really good. I haven't had one in years now, because when you're a native, you don't like hit up the spots as much that are, but I've certainly had them. They're really good. We in Pittsburgh like to put fries on our sandwiches. We put fries and cheese on our salads. So like, it was weird to me. It's so good. Yes. Like, it's so good. There would be like, I'm just thinking of so many restaurants, but like, they'll have your greens, and they'll slice up some chicken. It could be either grilled, or it could be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a buffalo.
Okay. Yeah.
They'll throw on some fries and cheese on top. It is so good. It's insane. It's so unhealthy, but it's so good. I just, that's just what we do. But I will say this, we're known in Pittsburgh, obviously, for Permanis and, that sort of end of the foodie spectrum. But there is so much good food and cuisine in Pittsburgh, because the town really developed around ethnic pockets. There's Polish Hill, and there's an Italian area, and there's a Ukrainian area. I mean, like, all the immigrants came, and they made their own little bakeries, little sweet shops, little restaurants. And a lot of these family traditions continue to this day. And so you're getting such authentic, good food, like literally in every corner of the city. It's insane. I feel like it's so underappreciated in that way. It's just, people are just starting to discover that side of it. But it's like, oh, I miss the food so much. I miss it.
Now, growing up, did you grow up in a big family?
I have one sister. My parents are, thank God, still alive and here and together. So that was our nuclear family, but we're a huge Italian family. So my mom is one of four. So we had all the cousins from her side of the family in town, and my dad had a sister. So we had that side of the family in town too. So we were we were together every Sunday as a family, just all together. So there were 10 cousins, 10 adults, and my grandma would make spaghetti dinner. So every Sunday we would go down to grandma's house and we had the kid table, the adult table. So our nuclear family was on the smaller side, but we were constantly around the bigger family.
Now, this is a question that I've always wanted to ask. I just got done watching. Have you had a chance to watch the Apple TV show, The Morning Show? Have you?
I watched. I'm like not fully through, but yeah, I'm maybe like 6 or 7 episodes in.
I mean, it seems very soap opera-ish, but I mean, is there any? I mean, because in radio it's very, very cutthroat. Is TV the same way though?
I guess the disclaimer here is that local TV is sort of a lot more chill because the stakes are not as high. That being said, I have plenty of friends who work at the network level. I also interned at NBC in New York and got kind of to like sit and observe. I think it's probably pretty competitive, but I will say I've never personally experienced any like negative side effects of that. I think probably just like in radio, there are people who want to be where they want to be, right? They want to be in the anchor chair. They want to be whatever, assigned to this beat. And you see that play out, in some sort of interpersonal interactions. But I have to say, everybody in TV that I've worked with has been like delightful. And you kind of get to the point where you realize there's a whole row of offices that are in charge of these decisions. There's nothing that you can do. Like, they're going to do what they do, and we're the pawns in a game, right? They move us around like little chess pieces, and you live with it. You get great opportunities, you get moved, passed over. It just kind of is what it is. But literally everyone I worked with was really kind. So I feel really lucky in that way.
I thought you and Bob Fryer had the best chemistry with each other.
Thanks. I love Bobby. He's so fun.
And I was sad to see him go. I really was, because I've been in the area. I've been around the Orlando area as a little kid. I've always been interested in the local TV broadcasters, and I even knew him from his time at WKMG while he was there, and then him moving. Also another and Amy Caulfield might be one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
She's so sweet. She's just truly delightful. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, such awesome people that work there. It's like, there might be weird. I don't know. I've never seen anything, but like you said, really nice people and really talented people at work. If anything, I was just kind of in awe, like, oh my gosh, let me just like sit back. And I remember working with Bob, and he was, he's so great on his feet. He's really funny. And I would just like, be like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much just kind of watching you do your thing. And that's what good chemistry is about too. Like, it's painful when chemistry, how important chemistry is, right? When you sit next to Yeah. So, I mean, when you see two people who are fighting for the spotlight and they want to be like, on camera, and they're not into the person next to them, it feels uncomfortable for the viewer. So I was next to someone who was just so good and such a professional. I was like, I'm going to take this opportunity to like learn how he does it. Cause he's so fun. I just talked to him last week, and he's a true friend, and I had so much fun working with him.
Now, as an outside observer, I've always looked at this, and maybe I'm way off basis. I've always thought that it's a little unfair, the double standard that the men broadcasters have versus the women, because it just seems like the men get a little bit more leeway and can age gracefully. And I've seen too many times where, the female reporter or anchor is still good at what they do, but for some reason it kind of seems like they do get pushed out the door a little bit faster than some of the guys. Am I off basis by saying that, or no?
I don't think so. I mean, I think in TV as in life, right? It's unfortunate. And I think there's been a lot of movement toward like a more positive approach toward aging, which is something I think social media has strangely helped with, and helping to sort of make women embrace who they are and where they are at that moment in life. But I think you're not off base. in general.
Even though they won't admit it.
They won't admit it. No.
But it does happen though. You'll look at guys that are, hey, he's looking kind of rough, getting a little bit older, and he's still around.
Yeah. It's I know it's like really one of those not fair things. I haven't seen it play out too closely. Like I feel like the management at the stations I worked at was very actually really valued women in their roles of power as they sort of like grew with the station. But I think it's true in general. And I think it just sucks. I mean, there's just like, we as a society have work to do to change the minds of people so that when they get into those positions of power and run these media companies, that they can start to value women for things beyond their looks too. Right. So it starts, it's probably more generational work, but we raise our kids now to sort of see beauty in all forms and at all ages. But I think it's definitely part of like, I don't know, like a greater cultural issue for sure.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No, you didn't at all. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I'm raising 2 daughters and I want them to know they're more than what they look like. Like, yes, it's great to, I clearly love taking care of, myself. I talk about hair products on my blog, I talk about makeup. I love that side of being a woman, but I also know what it feels like to have a conversation with someone and they can't see beyond that, and how frustrating and annoying it is. And I like most women, have experienced other bad things that have come along with, the whole Me Too movement. We know about it by now. So, I think it's really great to talk about, because the more we are open with this, the more our girls can hear that they're valued for more than just their outward appearance.
Have you ever, I mean, you don't have to go into, have you ever through your broadcasting career ever dealt with a Me Too situation at all, or no?
Not professionally, but personally I have.
Yeah. One of the female broadcasters I have the utmost respect for, because she has been around since I was even before in high school, is Claire Metz. Have you ever seen her? She is a bull. She gets out there.
She's good. Yeah.
And it's really interesting because she's been around for a while and she's still killing it, in my opinion.
She's so smart. She's so good. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, people that have grown with a station like that, that's such an asset. And you see her at work and this lady knows her stuff. So I haven't met her personally, but of course I've seen her a ton, and I love it. I love that, there's women out there that are just killing it like that.
All right. I want to get a little bit more behind the scenes with you. How does somebody go about, because I know as a guy going up and meeting a woman or introducing yourself, I gotta know, how did you and your husband meet? Because were you on TV at the time or not?
I was just not here. Oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever told this story
because I'm just interested, because I know that I would be intimidated to go up and talk to somebody with a strong personality like yourself.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I get that. So I've never told this in full. My friends, obviously, and family know it, but so he's right behind me. That's our picture, I just realized. But yeah, Andrew is from Orlando and I'm from Pittsburgh. I was working full-time as a morning anchor at the CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh. And my sister was here and had moved from Pittsburgh, met her then husband, now ex-husband, but had been in Florida for a couple of years. They had started a family and they had their first baby. So I had been back and forth visiting Orlando a couple of times to, see them as they moved in and as she was pregnant and the baby was here. So it was Christmas, I think in 2008, when my then brother-in-law said, they just had their baby. My niece was 2 weeks old. So they were hunkered down at home, and he'd just gotten back from a holiday party. And he's like, I ran into this, this friend at this holiday party, and they brought up this guy's name. And I haven't seen him since middle school. We used to be friends in middle school, but we went to different schools. And he's like, I feel like you guys would get along. And I was like, well, that's kind of, random. He's like, yeah, I actually haven't seen him in, I don't know, probably 10 years, but I just feel like you should meet him. So can I just give him a call? I was like, you're going to come down anyway. You're coming to visit the baby next week. So what if let me just give him a call and see if, he's got a wife or a girlfriend, what's going on. I really feel like you guys would click. And I was like, okay, whatever. I had just broken up with a boyfriend that I had dated for 7 years, so long. And I was like, yeah, I want to come down to Florida, have fun, whatever. So my then brother-in-law calls Andrew, my husband, out of the blue. Andrew tells the story, like he looks and sees his info on caller ID. And he's like, oh my God, like total blast from the past. Let it go to voicemail because he was, indisposed at the moment. Called him back. And my then brother-in-law was like, listen, my sister-in-law is going to come down for the weekend. We just had a baby. We can't go out. Would you just take her to dinner or like do something? We can't do anything. We've got this newborn at home. And Andrew tells the story. He's like, got on his computer and Googled me. He's like, okay, I'll take her out. So we had never, obviously met before. So I came down that weekend and Andrew came. It was so sweet to my sister's house and he had a little gift for the baby. And we went out to dinner and then the next day, and we went to a Magic game. And then the next day I was in town through the weekend and we ended up going out again. And then he took me to church on Sunday and I was like, oh, he's like really nice. So like one trip turned into like talking all the time when I was back in Pittsburgh. My contract was up in Pittsburgh and I was like, I'm just going to check in Orlando. He's like, yeah, see if there's anything down here. And I literally applied to probably 5 or 6 jobs and the best offer I got. So not only was it great professionally because it was, it was just a great offer, but my sister was also there. Andrew was also there. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I promise this isn't because of you, but I'm taking this job, like whether or not we end up together. Yeah. So I got the job down here and we continued to date and the rest is history, but it was a long distance blind date that we met on.
That is an amazing story. Now, this is another question I had. There's got to be some difficulties that people don't think of. Is it hard for a husband to be married to a big personality like yourself on TV? Like, I mean, I don't know what he does for a living and stuff, but I mean, a lot of guys are like, oh, they're the rock, they're the big dog in the relationship and stuff. And then you're married to somebody that everybody in Orlando knows.
Andrew was always very gracious about it. I do think there's naturally, like you said, this like alpha mentality that just sort of in hetero relationships, at least, when a man and woman are together, I think that just, that's just a dynamic. Sometimes it's just there. Andrew was really never like that. He was always very supportive. There was no issue with, people recognizing me or messaging me. I mean, he was very fine with that. The only thing that was really hard was the schedule because it was just, I was gone all night or I was gone. Yeah, it was a really bad schedule. So that was like the big thing for us was like, oh my gosh, now we have kids. We had 2 kids and I was still working. I was coming home for dinner break because you get dinner break instead of lunch break when you're working from 2 to midnight.
Did you live close to Lake Mary?
We moved up to Lake Mary when I was working so that I could literally come home. We would do the 5 and 6. The 5 was an hour long newscast. The 6 was a half hour. I would shoot my promos, literally run home. I was still nursing. I would nurse the baby to sleep. I would, he would take care of our son and get him to sleep. I would wipe off my makeup, do all this kid stuff, clean whatever was left with his help. He's always been really helpful in that way. He's like, has like no issue with like gonna go back to work at 9 o'clock. And it was like I was living like 3 different lives all at once. It was really crazy. So I think that was the biggest thing.
Yeah, I when I was married, I was working nighttime radio in Orlando at the time, and it is difficult when you work that different schedule because they're working during the day, you're working at night. And when everybody else is supposed to be off, you're working. And I don't think people realize that.
Yeah. And it's a sacrifice that a partner has to make. So, I mean, for as great as those jobs are, and listen, I wouldn't trade what I did for anything. I loved my job. But I would say that's a big thing to think about, and also because as a woman, yes, men can be helpful. And Andrew is still a super helpful and active dad and husband, but they can't have the babies. They can't nurse the babies. There's only so much anyone can step in and help you with. So ultimately, just by virtue of me being the mother, things I had to do. So it's it's a lot. It's a lot,
Yeah.
but
Now,
we made it work for as long as we could in that schedule.
On with me right now is Sonny Abata. Check out her website, sonniabata.com. Now, what was the determining factor? What was the one thing and the reason that you decided to walk away from broadcast news in your prime? In your prime.
Yeah.
That had to be a big decision.
It was a big decision, and it was one that I probably in my gut knew I had to make about a year before I made it. And so it was a complete lack of friendships. You can have friends, but when you only see them once every 3 months, because you're never at happy hour, you're never at dinners on Saturdays because you're too tired, after a week of going to bed at 2 a.m. My friendships were suffering. My relationship was suffering. I didn't see Andrew. That was a huge driving force. I was not the wife. Oh, there's someone walking up to my door. I was not the wife or the friend that I wanted to be. And I started becoming really keenly aware of that. And it sounds like very 50s housewife of me to say, well, that and the physical exhaustion was another actually really big factor. I never quite felt rested, but I think, I was trying to be everything to everyone and be a career woman and be a mom. And you just cannot do it all at once. You can't. There is no woman in history who's been able to do it all at once. And so I had to really come to terms with, what will I be happier having done when I look back in my life? Now, I say this knowing that not everybody's in the position to step away from their jobs. I don't want to offend anyone by saying this was just my reality.
Yeah.
So I thought, gosh, when I look back, I feel like as far as my job, I hit the marks that I wanted to hit. Unless I was going to try to move beyond this market and move to a bigger market or try for network, there was nothing left for me to professionally strive for. I loved my job. I had a great job. I had a great coworker. I had a great boss. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go out, and I'm going to go out amongst a great group of professional people. So it was those factors though. It's my friendships, my relationship, and my physical exhaustion. And it just, it's a lot. You just start to realize, oh my gosh, I have to make a call or I'm going to drive myself into the ground with exhaustion.
Management must have been freaking out when you told them, right? I mean, did they try to throw some more money or try to sweeten the pot for you a little bit?
They did sweeten the pot for me. And I went back for a year, and every day that year I was like, and this is not a knock on my bosses. They were great. I loved them. But I went back, and I was for that extra year because I had quit, and they were like, my news director was like, just come in, let's just talk about this. Cause he called me, I needed to, with contract deadlines. So I was like, I'm going to call you at this time tomorrow. Let me know your thoughts. You're going to resign. So he called me that morning. I was like, I'm out. I'm so sorry. I love it here, but I'm feeling really called to, I'm feeling like I need to be at home. I can't explain why. I just know that I can't be doing this. And so he's like, just come in and talk to us when you get here. So I came in, I ended up signing a short-term with a couple outs, and I got to that first out and I ended up leaving. They made it great. They were amazing. There was nothing they didn't do right. It just wasn't where I was supposed to be. And I got tired of pretending like I couldn't hear that voice inside of me. Every day I was like, no, this doesn't feel right, and I had 2 kids at home. I got unexpectedly pregnant with our third. So I was like, I need this break from that.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be nice to be there for your kids all the time now, because now you said your oldest was around 7. I mean, did they ever get to see you, or were they too young to realize what mom does for a living?
No, they did. In fact, my son, the last story I covered was Hurricane Matthew. So, I was going in and I was leaving them at home at my in-laws' place with Andrew while I went to work for continuous coverage. And for a while they would be like, you're not on the TV anymore. Why is mommy not on TV? So my son was definitely old enough to know. My daughter was too, our middle girl. But, now they're just like, they're like, their laundry and their cook, their laundress and their cook. They're like, oh, wait, what? You had a life before us? So.
Yeah. Now, so anything you miss about it, or everybody is you're not going to be 100% happy with everything. There's going to be some stuff you miss. I'm sure the relationships you had with the people you saw.
Yes, that is the thing that I miss. I miss my people. I told you, we would laugh so much. Bob and I laughed a lot at work. It was just never a boring day. So I miss those friendships, and I miss really feeling like I was doing the job I was meant to do. Like I never went into work and was like, oh, this job. I just loved living in that world. So I miss that. But I will say that, sort of circling back to social media and technology, I have been able to continue to connect with people through my podcast and my writing in a way that's been so meaningful. And while it may not be through the traditional channels of being on TV or being that face in the community, I still have tons of people who I hear from that used to watch that now listen to the podcast. Or so, it's definitely a trade-off, but I would say those are the things that I miss, or the people.
And now that you're doing your own thing, I mean, you see a lot of people like, well, people get into broadcasting and make a lot of money and become rich and famous. That's not the case, especially in radio. I know that. I mean, unless you're getting on a big network somewhere, I mean, you're not like, people have this perception of broadcasters like they're, just killing it, but it's a struggle though sometimes.
Yeah, it is. And I think you would agree. It's work that you do from your heart because you love it. It's not like you said, it's not like anybody loves getting up at 3:00 in the morning to anchor a 4 a.m. morning newscast, or love staying up till midnight. But I do feel like there's a true calling aspect to this. And I was like the kid in school who liked doing book reports, because I liked being like, listen, you're not going to believe this. Look what I found out. So this job for me was like literally my true calling. And to an extent that the podcast and the blog are still. So I have that outlet still. But you're right. It's not like you get in. That's why the people who are in it for the wrong reasons will always, not the wrong reasons, but thinking they're going to, make a ton of money, will always probably end up leaving, because you don't get there anytime soon. I can tell you that. But it's fun work. It's amazing work.
But what I've found out more about doing the podcast, see, because now we're living in an age where you don't have to be on the TV. You don't have to be on radio, because, I mean, heck, look at Joe Rogan, okay? Joe Rogan, the guy just signed a humongous deal for a podcast he started a long time ago.
It's insane. And he was an early adopter of the technology. So I think the lesson now is as people continue to get into this space. And I know with my show, there's also, it's like a halt in growth because of the sort of, I don't know, the endless new podcasts that are coming out every day. But yeah, those early adopters, I mean, they're killing it. People starting their own podcast networks. But people like this kind of information, like what you're doing. It's great because I can pick it up and pop in my earbuds and listen while I wash the dishes. It's on your time, and it's when it works for you, and it's topics that you want to hear about. So I know when people come and listen to my show, they want to hear about certain things, and that's what I do. And it's great. It's simple.
Well, I've noticed, and I know you're busy, and I don't want to take up, because I could sit here and talk shop for like hours, but Mom, but and I'll about 5 more minutes, and
yeah, no worries. I got a sitter here this morning, so I could do this. Okay. This is my peaceful time.
So what I've noticed about doing stuff online is you actually get to see real statistics on it, because a lot of people don't understand how the ratings and stuff works in TV, and especially in radio. My God, if I told people the sampling size on the ratings and stuff, it would absolutely blow their minds, because I mean, it's such a small slice of people that get a PPM meter or a book or something like that, that you really don't get the real flow of how you're doing with this. You can log on and look at your analytics on a daily basis and see your growth on a daily basis.
Awesome. Yeah, you're right. Even in TV, I remember them being like, oh, there's like, I don't know, don't take this number for gospel, like, 300 books that went out, which for people listening, it's like, people that record their viewing habits, and they use that as a sampling of who is number one in the market. And I remember being like, did anyone ever think that was a great idea? Like, what? There's like millions of people here, and we're going to hand out 329 bucks, and we're going to get a great idea of, I don't know if it's that number, but you're right. And it is fun. It's really cool to see in the digital space right away how your work is being received. It's really cool.
Since you've been doing your blog and your podcast, have you had any feedback from people that have said, well, Sonny, this really helped me out. You really gave me some advice, or I learned something. And that's got to be a little bit different, because when you're just ripping and reading the news on a daily basis, they don't get to see you as a person. They just see you as somebody that's delivering the news now. Have you
So true.
had anybody that shared their experiences with you?
Yes. In fact, I just did a podcast with a woman named Alicia Kozak, who I mentioned her briefly earlier, is a survivor from online, right? So her story is insane. She was literally rescued by FBI agents after she had been driven across state lines. I mean, it is the most intense, crazy story. Her work is now dedicated toward educating kids on internet safety and passing laws to sort of bolster budgets for that type of protection. Anyway, that I cannot tell you how many parents were like, oh my God, because of this episode and because of what she said, I'm talking to my kids about online safety. I can't believe something like this happened. Holy crap. Thanks for bringing her on. I mean, it's cool. Like it's stuff that, people are actually going to use in their daily life. Whereas if you're reading off a list of, 10 news stories that day, maybe one impacts you, maybe, but this is, you drill down, you drill into topics, and you have the ability to really like talk about them and hash them out. So I love it so much.
Do you think that the big news media outlets are going to look at how podcasts and online content has evolved and become? Do you think that they're going to fight it, or do you think that they're going to have to go in that direction? Because I think people are getting tired of just regular news the way it's being delivered.
I agree. Yes, I think the writing has been on the wall for some time that it's time for a little bit of an evolution. And you already see big groups like iHeartRadio has a podcast group that they put their talent on, or have shows that so you're already starting to see the big corporations sort of elbow in on this space, which that it's hot when people start doing that. It is, I will say, like little underdog moment here. It is frustrating to be in that space and to be someone who is putting out great content and feeling like, because these massive companies are now in this world, your stuff just gets pushed out. So it is kind of like, really, does a celebrity, does Alec Baldwin really need a podcast? Like, I think it's like, oh my God, let us little people have space a little bit. But it is what it is, because it is such an amazing medium that everybody wants to be in on it. And I totally get that.
Yeah, it used to frustrate me so much being in radio. You cut your teeth, you learn the business, and then you see like a Sirius XM satellite who went through this. They were giving every single celebrity out there their own show. And I'm like, yes, they're good. They have opinions, but they haven't had to pay their dues in the business. They haven't had to be an intern and get people their coffee or just do random BS for people just to make a name or work your way up.
That's why I love supporting and listening to shows that are like by people who kind of came up on their own, without being, not necessarily, I'm sure some celebrities have great podcasts and it's not a knock on who they are as people, but the most interesting stories are the ones we haven't heard. Like, we got you guys, all you famous people, we got you. We know your stories. It's all good. You're smart, you're funny, we get it. But I want to hear people's stories that we haven't met yet. And it's just such a for doing that, which is all to say, like, the hustle every week just to get a show off the ground. And I literally do everything by myself except editing. I just pass that off because there's only so much you can do.
What, your audio or video?
Audio.
Okay, well, come on. If you need a good editor, that's what I did for the longest time.
I need to get in touch, but you're busy with your own thing. I don't want to take time away. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll listen. I'll edit your promos. I'll edit all that stuff for you.
I promise. I promise I will pay a fair wage.
Listen. I just need it because I so long, man.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it's because a lot of these hosts, they get in, a lot of them don't even know how to run their own board. I worked at Real Radio for the longest time, and if one of the producers didn't show up or was at a promotion the night before and got a little too drunk, the host has no clue how to even turn the damn thing on.
I will say that was me in the TV. Like, we were spoiled, we literally went to set, sat our butts on the chair and put our microphone on. Now in some shops it's union, so we couldn't do it. Like in Pittsburgh, I was not allowed to touch anything,
No.
but it was not union down here. And I'm like so embarrassed. I was one of those spoiled talent people that would just be like, test 1 2 1 2, and that's like the extent of what I had to do. But you know, it is very humbling, and it is really empowering to. I always call them my babies. Like I feel like every week that I put out a show, it's like I'm having another baby. I'm putting my heart and soul, and I'm making it good, and I'm putting it out into the world. So it's like really gratifying to like be in on all of the work in that process.
Now it's got to be hard being a newscaster, and it's got to happen to the best of them. Just reading all the depressing stuff that happens in the world. Was there ever a story that you covered as a reporter or an anchor that was like that affected you like personally at all?
I mean,
I don't need to get too deep or anything.
No, that's okay. I'm just thinking. Yes, I'm thinking of one situation. Always the stories about children were very difficult. I, on more than one occasion, had to take my earpiece out, and I was crying, and like Bob had to take over for a second. I mean, especially after becoming a parent, those stories began to impact me differently. I also was in Shanksville in Pennsylvania, one of the 9/11 crash sites, right? Like well before the memorial was up. And that was a very haunting experience that I will never forget. Okay, just like anything. I mean, even what on the news seems like a run-of-the-mill crime story, and I do that with air quotes because everybody's life is one crime story is not less important or meaningful than another. It's all one life lost, right? And all lives are equal. So it was always kind of like, man, here I am standing somewhere where someone literally just lost their life, and this is going to be a 45-second piece on the news of the sound. It just felt, which it has to be, right? Because, you have a lot to cover, but it was always like blew my mind. Like, oh my gosh, we're really dealing with life and death. We had a story in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a lot of bridges, and there's one that was right adjacent to my old station. And there was a guy that crawled up to the bridge and was ready to jump off the bridge. And I'm a 21-year-old reporter trainee. This is like my first maybe 3 months on the job. And I'm like, this guy's life is like, this doesn't feel right but you have to cover it. I mean, the bridge it was a whole thing. There's so many moments in news, which is why there's so many moments in news that are literally life and death, and they're all meaningful and impactful in their way, which is why it is a job that it needs to be, the people in it continue to treat it with respect, because it's not just like we're talking celebrity gossip, it's real deal stuff. And it's someone's life is changed every day. The stories that we cover have forever changed one or 2 or 10 families' lives. So you have to bear that in mind. What is a soundbite to you or a 10-second is literally a family's entire world. So keeping that in mind really helps keep your head on straight.
I've always wanted, I was like, cause in radio, you get a little bit more leadway, and I did a lot of the man on the street stuff. That's where I made a name for myself. I was going out, and I don't get embarrassed. See, that's why I always thought I would have been a great reporter, because I will ask anything and everything, and I really just don't give a damn. And I know that sometimes that is a bad thing. It's ended a lot of relationships I've had. But I ended up covering the Casey Anthony trial for the longest time when I was working in Tampa with Bubba the Love Sponge. And it was crazy because a lot of these reporters, they wouldn't press the issue. And I was asking these questions every single day to them, and they just started ignoring me. And Cheney Mason, you remember that picture of Cheney Mason flipping the bird out during... That was at me because I was hounding him.
What were you asking that made him so defensive?
Well, okay, so the first couple of days I was asking some pretty decent questions, and then, they made it seem like they didn't want the press bothering them. Mm-hmm. Now, the way it was set up, a lot of people don't realize this, is that their law office was at the Bank of America building right across the corner from the courthouse.
Right.
They could have gotten in a car, driven around, gone into the garage at the courthouse and avoided all the press. But no, they wanted to be in front of the camera, so they would walk that 4 or 5 football field long. And I guess I ended up asking a question, and then I got Cheney to curse me out, like while a bunch of reporters were around. But they started ignoring me, and I was like, if you guys aren't gonna like even answer any of my questions, that means I'm just gonna ask the most ridiculous stuff that I can ask every single day. And they started getting really, really angry. And then that day, whenever they were celebrating, I was like knocking on the door trying to get a photo. And Jamie just walked right up and was like, yeah,
That's crazy. I totally remember. I remember that image, and I remember that moment because, I mean, that was a really highly emotional time around this town.
And Jane Velez Mitchell was standing, behind it, and she comes up and they freaked out about it. And I was like, it's not a big deal. It was cable TV news, so it wasn't like over the broadcast air. She was like, what did Cheney just do? And I flipped the bird into the camera, and she like got so angry at me, and I wasn't even thinking about it at the time. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. But he did he never mentioned me by name in his book, but he was like, there was this one jackal reporter, he called me a jackal, and he was like, and some of the questions, like, listen, I've done a lot of stuff I'm not proud of in radio, because radio, we push the envelope sometimes.
Right.
I think one of the questions that I asked, and I'm probably going to lose a lot of respect with you, but they had a bunch of female paralegals that was sitting there, and they had given me a question, and I said, I asked Cheney, I said, are you worried about your female legal team? God, I feel like such a scumbag when I asked this. I said, are you afraid that they're going to spend so much time with Casey that their cycles are going to match?
Oh my gosh, no, you didn't. Oh my God.
Yeah, I did. I feel like such a
scumbag. Were you just trying to get a reaction, or?
Yes, because I told them, if you're going to ignore me, I'm just going to ask every single stupid question I could ask. And I regret a lot of things that I asked. But yeah, that was the one question that Cheney put in the book that was like, yeah, that's me. And then more and more as I've grown and I've gotten older, I've looked back and I'm like, man, I've done a lot of really, really messed up stuff. And I don't know, I have a lot of regrets, and I'm trying to make up for them and stuff. I don't know if that makes sense.
It totally does. It takes a lot of, like, it takes someone to stand up and say, okay, you know what, I screwed up. And I feel like there's a lesson in that for everyone. Admit that what you did was wrong. And also, like, remember that, like, in this day and age, nothing is ever forgotten and things are recorded. And your reputation, I mean, like, your reputation is always on the line these days, because we always have one of these, nearby. Yeah. Someone's always got one. So you gotta behave accordingly, But that's good. At least I realize what you did,
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. That's, everybody asks it, and I think that's why, when earlier I said radio is the rats of broadcasting, because we kind of are, because we try to do shocking things to make a name for it.
Right. It's more performance than it is. I mean, like in news, like I said, we're not dealing with our own, like, you guys were able to talk about your lives, and it was more personal. Like, I like that was separate for me, because I never wanted to get on in the air and be like, oh my God, you're not going to believe my husband, because that's going to have lasting implications. My kids didn't choose to be on TV. I'm not going to slap, their stories. I mean, like, I talk in general terms about their stuff, but I try to be aware of that, because especially as a writer and as a creative person, I know the importance of understanding one's own story and being able to write your own, life story. And I never want to be that partner or that mother that's like telling the world so much about my kids that I'm inadvertently pegging them as, okay, this is my crazy one, and this is my funny one. And I don't want to do that. I think, what if my mom and dad had done that to me? Like, put me out there. So I guess, long story short, to say, I'm grateful that news kind of kept me in my lane, because, and it's great, to bring your family in and or bring your personal life into your story, because of course they're in your life. But when you start making it about them, or in your case, trying to be as sensational as you can, it can come back to bite you. And I always have that in the back of my mind. Like, am I going to regret this 10 years from now? Like, what if the PTA president from my kid's school came up and said, you sounded like a real sailor on your podcast. I mean, like, not that I don't swear or whatever, but I think about that
Oh, I
stuff.
saw one of your videos the other day where you let one rip, and I was like,
I love swearing. I mean, I swear all the time. I mean, I do on social media all the time, but like nothing that's going to last longer than an Instagram story.
Yeah, but it was great because remember when you were a kid and like you saw maybe the first time you saw one of your teachers or something out and you maybe heard them curse or you saw them at a bar
Yes.
or something, you're like, oh my God, the teacher, because everybody thinks TV people are like these like saints and everything, and I'm sure that they're just real people like everybody else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I like swearing just as much as I like. I feel like I kind of painted myself in a corner. I have to be like well behaved from here on out. I mean, there's certainly a lot of inappropriate topics and things that are discussed, but I do try to keep that in the back of my mind because like the digital footprint is real.
Well, Sonny, I really appreciate you taking the time. I didn't mean to take up a full hour. I looked down, but I mean that's how a conversation is going well when it flies by like that. SONNIABATTA.com, and if there's anything I can ever do, I'm working with a couple of other people. Do you remember Jana Shelfer, Jana Banana?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, of course.
Radio. She's doing a blog now. She's doing a lot of motivational stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, and these connections, because you know how we had said that there's just so many people and there's just so much content out there. I'm helping her as well as Jack Bradshaw's wife, Naomi Bradshaw. He's the program director at Real Radio. She's awesome. Doing a blog. And I want to start working with these local online content people because I think we're all stronger together, helping promote each other and stuff. So if there's
love that
I can ever do, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much.
Whatever I can, because I think if we work together, the opportunities of us reaching a larger audience is that much better.
I totally agree. Can I mention a project that I'm about to launch too? I mean, I would love to actually have your help on this too. So I'm in the middle, my podcast right now, it's called 30 something with Sonny, but I'm in the middle of a rebrand and I'm launching in actually 3 weeks from now, a live talk show, digital talk show. And the audio is going to be ripped for the podcast. It's called We Gotta Talk, because I don't want to, I'm getting beyond the 30 something stage and I'm really all about getting uncomfortable and talking like real talk on very like on big topics. So the whole vibe of the show is like pretty much what we did here. It's like getting in, digging deep on big topics, and I can't wait. It's launching the week of September 14th. So come check out We Gotta Talk.
It'll be video and
it'll be both. And I'm gonna rip the audio for the podcast.
Where are you filming it at? Like at your house? Are you building a studio, or did you?
I gotta do it from home for now until the coronavirus is no longer an issue. Yeah. So I'm going to be just doing it from here for now. But I mean, I'm all for my podcast for 30 something. I'm already doing video with people. I'm already doing this, but the show's kind of taken a turn now because while I enjoyed talking about topics that were relevant to the 30s for this podcast, it's been up for a year and a half. It'll be 2 years in November. This is my passion. I love asking uncomfortable questions. I love digging deep. I love big topics. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about infidelity. We're going to talk about, untraditional relationships. We're going to talk about women's health topics. There's just so much. We're getting like really juicy and I can't wait.
Well, I'm going to look forward to it. And if you ever need help producing behind the scenes, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to help out any way I can.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. It's so fun to actually have a long chat with you.
Well, thank you.